Districts, regionals. Long ago, the two systems of the first robotics competition lived in harmony, qualifying the same number of teams for the championship in Atlanta. That is, until the debates started. Which was better? Why couldn't we use only districts for everywhere else? Could Chief Delphi get through a summer without debating which system we use to compete? We're not here to answer any of those questions for you. Today, we're rewinding to the start of the district system in Michigan, with the split dating back to just around 15 years ago. We'll cover just how the district system came about for the 2009 season, with the evolution of the district point system, and how FIRST in Michigan has grown to cover a third of the high schools in the state. We've got one of the leading drivers of the district system in its original form with us today to talk about the origin, implementation, and proliferation of the district system. Jim Zondag from FRC 33, the Killer Bees, on episode 2 of Rewind, a first in Michigan.
This video on First Updates Now is made possible by viewers like you and also the following sponsors. At Kettering University, over 30% of the student population was in high school robotics. These same students have received a portion of over $7 million in FIRST scholarship. Scholarship applications will open in September. Get ready to go pro and get more information at kettering.edu/first. Fun is continuing to grow and looking for new ad partners for the 2024 season. If your organization has a positive message to spread to our over 250,000 unique viewers, go to firstupdatesnow.com/contact to get more information.
I'm your host, Ari, and I competed in New York's regionals as a student, and now I mentor Team 8085 in the New England district system. And Jim, why don't you lead us off a bit with your own intro?
My name is Jim Zondag. I am team leader of Team 33, the Killer Bees from Auburn Hills, Michigan. I have been involved in FIRST since 1998. So this is going into my 27th season of FIRST. In addition to FIRST, I've done VEX, I've done OKRA, I've worked with Oakland schools with the VEX League. I've been on the game design committee of various robot leagues, as well as being a competitive bicyclist and former motorcycle racer and other machine sports. So my real trade is I am an automotive engineering manager. Electrical engineer by trade, like to design electronic systems and cool cars. So I'm currently the manager of product development for Mopar at Chrysler Stellantis. So what we do is we make all the aftermarket parts and accessories that make cool cars even cooler. So if you want big giant tires on your Jeep with all kinds of off-road lights and things like that, that's what my department does. Or if you want a Hellcat Challenger that does 200 miles an hour, we can help you out.
So speaking of making something cool even cooler, let's start off with just some background. How did the concept of the district system come about?
It was really a burning ember for many years. People are aware of what happened in 2009 when we transitioned, but it had actually been in the works and in discussion for years prior to that. Quite honestly, we had talked about decentralization and low-cost event production for several years leading to that. I think the first real earnest discussions were in 2006. In the spring of 2006, we talked a lot about this within our FIRST organization within Michigan. We had regional planning committees, of which we were producing 3 regionals at the time: the West Michigan Regional, the Detroit Regional, and the Great Lakes Regional. The Detroit Regional and the Great Lakes Regional largely got amalgamated into the same sort of controlling body. And some people like Gail Alpert, who many of you know, and Pam Williamson and some others were all involved in the planning and production of those. It really, a lot of the motivation was motivated by 2 things, really, which can be wrapped into one thing. It's return on investment. How do we increase the experience for the students? How do we reduce the cost of the program in all ways? That really was the primary motivator for it. Regionals at the time were very expensive. There was no low-cost regional model or anything yet. And so what we started discussing in 2006 in earnest was, how do we make lower-cost events? Is it possible for us to regionalize control of some of this, so that we can say we don't have to bring, a van full of roadies from New Hampshire to Michigan and pay for all those costs and equipment going back and forth? Could we localize, centralize a lot of that? So we took a task in 2006, believe it or not. The IRI, the Indianapolis Robotics Invitational, had been operating for many years already at that point. I think they were in their 6th or 7th year. And in our opinion, they had the best low-cost operating model for what was viewed as a premium off-season event at the time. We went to the IRI and we had people from a couple of teams, and we discussed with Chris Foltz and other people from the IRI Planning Commission some details about their budget process, how they spent money, what the total event cost, and where their expenses were. Because we thought a lot of things like big elaborate light shows and things like that, as cool as they are, were not really applicable in every instance of a high school sport. You don't have that in high school basketball tournament. So why do you have that at a local regional event? So in 2006, we compiled some of that information, and then we put a proposal together to FIRST saying we would like to host low-cost events here. FIRST said categorically, no. We don't trust you to run your own events. That's something that we've always done, and rightfully so. They had always done it, and it really is the showpiece of their system. When the robots come out to play, that's what it's an experience-based company, FIRST Robotics. So what we proposed as a counter proposal was to do an in-season, off-season. I've always thought this is a great model. I keep waiting for it to proliferate, but we really did it once and only once. What we did was we hosted an all-rookie event at Kettering University as a pilot. Only rookies could go. FIRST has a big sort of priority on rookies. They had very active, recruitment expansion. They still do, but rookies were a very high priority to the FIRST leadership at the time. So what we said is what we would do is we would make a rookie-only event. We arranged to host it at Kettering University, who many of you all know, and we hosted a rookie-only event, which was, non-binding. The results didn't matter, but we tried to run it the way that we would run a district. To give rookies advanced experience prior to real events. And we put that event on and ran it like the way that we would run our event model. And we had people from New Hampshire come to observe this. And it was a 2-day event, like what we would do with, with our what we were thinking was a proposed model. That was very successful. So then we got the task to figure out, okay, how would we do this for real? How would we do this for real? As soon as the 2007 FRC season was over, we worked on it during the season, but as soon as the season was over, like we had meetings at the World Championship that year with the FIRST leadership, and then we got assignments to take back and figure out what was the model. And we worked through that whole summer. And the answer, like on several interfaces, was no, we don't like this. No, we don't like that. Eventually, we got to late summer. And then, believe it or not, I think one of the best things that ever happened to us was the global financial crisis. I really think that was the catalyst for everything that made it possible. What it really was is, again, we were going for a decentralization model to create our own nonprofit corporation to manage locally league operations. And we had over 100 teams at the time, right? When we started talking about this in earnest, we had about 100 teams. When we moved over, we were at about 120. So that was a substantial portion of the league at the time. And I think FIRST already knew in August of that year that there were major line item sponsors that were starting to back out or unwilling to commit to finances that fall. And they were looking at the fundraising forecast, and my guess is it was pretty bleak. And then we're in there going, what we're going to do? We're going to take a big chunk of your financial liability and just put that on us. And eventually they said yes. That really was a big part of it. A lot of it was leading up to that, though, honestly, was a lot of discussion about the experience for the students and how we maintain events that were worthy of FIRST. But really, yeah, that really was, it was a confluence of events. We had been trying for several years. And then I think a strong motivating factor on the New Hampshire side financially made them say, yeah, maybe now is the time to try this.
District systems have been implemented mainly in areas with high team density, starting with the first in Michigan district in the 2009 season, when they had 120 teams. The pilot program run in Michigan in the 2009 season included 7 district events and 1 state championship event, versus the 3 traditional regional events held in the previous year. This system was implemented with 6 main goals. 1, reduce the price of entry, increase the return on investment, remove barriers, create environments that promote success, provide local infrastructure, and finally, bring more outside attention to FRC. During the pilot year, only Michigan teams competed within the state, but we're still allowed to travel outside the state to other regional events. This is one of the main negatives of the district system, and was one of the first arguments against it. Teams that traditionally competed in Michigan but were from outside of Michigan, teams like 45, 71, 111, and many more, all had to find different events, which in most cases were further away. The pilot program ran successfully in 2009. Approximately half of the Michigan FRC teams qualified for the Michigan State Championship event on district points, and the same number of teams headed to Atlanta from Michigan as they sent in 2008. However, the point system wasn't without its complaints. Originally, culture awards such as Impact, EI, Gracious Professionalism, and Rookie Awards received 0 points, while Robot Awards received 5. This was largely frowned upon by the wider community, but controlled directly by HQ. Despite this drawback, in a postseason survey, results were overwhelmingly positive in favor of keeping the district system. 94% of team leaders, mentors, and team members rated their district model experience as good or excellent. All 6 outlined goals were met with very good results. First, approved the district model as an alternate competition format with the outline that in order to be successful, the area must have a high density of FRC teams in a limited geographic area, and an experienced and dedicated local volunteer base. So speaking of the district point system, how originally was the district point system developed for Michigan?
Yeah, we had a committee. This was one of the line items on the committee, operations, logistics, and then tournament design. There were a number of us on it, myself, Mike Martis, Gail Alpert, Ed Debler from the Thunder Chickens. And there was a group of us from around here who were all on this committee, working on the tournament design and the matriculation mechanism. It rapidly turned into, there were 2 key people who were really the instrumental in that, myself and Dan Kimura from 469. We were both pretty much hardcore competitors. We were, actual team coaches, and we really, really cared a lot that this was done properly. We thought it was one of the most important things. If you're awarding a winner, it should be the winner. If you're advancing people into states, we have to have a way to do that. A lot of the mechanism for it. So we not only had to design how do we run a tournament, but then how do we use the output from that to basically rank everybody in the state. So we know that tournaments are dissimilar. There's different attendance that can't really be controlled. And there were a lot of open questions on the tournament design itself. And we wanted a lot of standards on that. So some of the first things that we actually focused on was we wanted all the tournaments to be the same for the return on investment point that we made earlier. One of the big things was, you could go to a regional back then and only get 6 qualifying matches, and some giant regional with 72 teams. It was insane. So it would, going into playoffs and alliance selection was almost like a random number generator. So we settled on having 12 matches per team with a finite tournament size of 36 to 48 initially, and sort of built our math off that. Based on that, we ended up just really just going with a hockey style tournament, saying we want to be game agnostic every match, so we can make a portable system that works year over year over year. We're not going to care what the scoring of the game is. We're not going to care what the tasks of the game are. We're not going to care about any of that. We want to know, did you win? Did you lose? And you're going to get 2 points per. And that's kind of indirectly because it ended up turning into ranking numbers, later, but we can get into that. Initially, we didn't have the extra RPs and things in first back then. We then worked on alliance selection. Alliance selection was one of the more contentious points of the whole system design. And a lot of this was done openly and with collaboration with First HQ. HQ at the time thought alliance selection was largely just a pile of opinions. This team likes that team. This team may like this team. But as competitors, Dan and I both felt very strongly that the alliance selection was actually the most important thing that happened at the tournament. That would usually determine the winner. And everybody who was paying attention usually would know who the number one pick was going to be before it even happened. So alliance selection, we put a fairly heavy weight just on your selection place in the draft and where you would be. And we came up with this 1 to 16 ranking. We tried to keep everything to integer points and nothing really fancy and no giant numbers. So eventually we got that figured out. For playoffs, really one of the key points was we did not want points for winning matches. We wanted points for advancement in the tournaments specifically. Because we wanted every match to matter. So if you win match 1, you lose match 2, you win match 3, your alliance advanced, right? We didn't want a non-deterministic volume of points being entered in. Well, someone won match 2, and then there's 5 more points in the system or something like that. No, we wanted every tournament of the same size to produce the same result and the same total points every time. Again, Dan and I both have a big background in math. I did data science and data engineering for a number of years professionally, and had access to some really good tools for visualization on a lot of this stuff. It wasn't just Excel charts. So a lot of it was, we used some pretty good methods for foundation on this. One of the other big things with awards, so there was a lot of contention over awards. Awards to first meant as much as winning in some cases. Awards, to us were like, it was almost redundant. Like a lot of the awards would either be like, either sort of randomly given out to, you go to an event, and there's only 2 rookies. Well, they're getting the 2 rookie awards, But there were a few of them that had strong correlation to success, and we felt like that was a thing that we could reward. We wanted them being worth not a lot, right? We applied 5 points to them. This was a difficult thing because first, originally, well, the chairman's award should be worth like 100 points. No, it's not. No, we wanted it to be about performance, and we wanted it to be a robotics championship. So it really was, arguing a little bit with some of the prior ethos at first, but we don't really think we actually think, if anything, it brings more attention to the sport, and that if you are genuinely good at this, that is the engine for creating a good team, right? If you're a great team and you're, Frog Force, or you're the hot team, or you're the cheesy poofs and you win all these accolades, you're also, to be an inspiration to the rest of the first population, you also have to be very good competitively. So we viewed those 2 things as more or less synonymous, which is why awards are not weighted very heavily. Does that help?
Awards also then become sort of a differentiator once you get down into sort of your 30 through 50 spot, because then if you have a team that's in that spot and they have a lot of awards, that does kind of indicate that the robot's better, but they might not be performing on the field as well too. So
correct.
That zone.
Correct. Yeah, that really was their primary function. Is we wanted to say, well, we got 2 teams that finished in the semifinals at their districts. One was up north, one was down south. But then one of them won the Driving Tomorrow's Technology Award at the time. They're probably better. We can't really tell. But we need to have something to measure them on, and we only wanted to take finite measurables out of the tournament, not any sort of, and we viewed the output from the judges as a tangible measurement that could be trusted about the overall quality of the team and teams in various categories.
As First in Michigan prospered, other areas began to look into implementing the system. These areas had high team density, a dedicated volunteer base, and the necessary level of collaboration. In 2012, Eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware formed the Mid-Atlantic region. In 2014, a standard district point system was developed, and the Pacific Northwest and New England officially joined on. The standardized point system took away the ability for a district to customize how it ranked teams and gave out points, but allowed direct cross-district comparison and alleviated previous complaints with the difference between culture and robot awards. Now, Impact and EI were comparable to a district event finals appearance, and first and second year teams received an automatic 10 and 5-point boost. Interdistrict play was introduced soon after the standardization in 2015. So Michigan districts were kind of in the spotlight in 2013, 2014, but how has First in Michigan evolved since the 2014 point standardization?
Okay, maybe a little backdrop on the point standardization. So originally Michigan, we did our thing. There was a lot of apprehension from home office, but it was very successful. Everybody loved it. You know, the participants all loved it. It wasn't universally loved, I should say, but for the most part, you know, all transitions can be painful for some, but overall, we thought it was a big benefit to the teams, particularly a lot of the weaker, newer teams really loved it. The really competitive teams at the top really loved it. And so a couple of years later, then the MAR district, the Mid-Atlantic region, they formed a similar construct. They pretty much carried over at least our tournament model verbatim. And then a couple of years later, we had New England and Pacific Northwest come on. And so after they joined, I believe in their second year, they came back and then they had a counter proposal for how to run tournaments that they brought back to HQ. We didn't like that. There were things about it that we didn't like, but I thought it was good. Anything that's untested is unproven, right? So we had other people with other opinions in the greater community who had a voice saying certain things we don't like. We negotiated all those points. Again, I spent a lot of that summer doing data visualization models, trying to prove our point that there were parts of it that we thought were tunable. There were other parts that we thought were inviolate. And we ended up more or less prevailing on most points. That pretty much everything that we thought was important was maintained in the new system, and the compromises we made, we felt really didn't degrade anything. So since then, I mean, we pretty much have been rolling with that ever since. There's really only two significant changes. Well, three, I guess. The awards complement slowly evolves. There'll be awards added and subtracted over time. Sometimes they're just renamed. Again, that is a minor component of the overall event point contribution. So to me, that's a subtlety that really doesn't matter. That's as many awards as First wants to hold. RPs were added into the system years ago, giving ranking points for on-field activities that in many people say, I mean, you get 2 ranking points. It's equivalent to winning the match, even if you lose. So it sort of doubles the number of points in play for the sorting criteria in the rankings that are used. But it turns out most of the time on most of the games that First has developed, the activities that your robot needs to do to obtain ranking points are largely synonymous with the activities you need to do to win. So they don't really change that much functionally. With the quality of the teams that bubble to the top, with a 4-point ranking system contribution versus a 2-point ranking system contribution. And then what was the third one? I can't even remember. Anyway, I said 3 points.
There's a lot of things that have changed in Michigan. I mean, there's no bag rules overall.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no bag rules. Believe it or not, we haven't talked about no bag rules, but one of the big things behind localization was getting rid of the crates. We thought everything relating to logistics in the early days of First was preposterous. the cost and effort required to move the robots around with freight companies when we were going to localize tournaments that might be right up the street from your school just was nonsensical. So we wanted to get rid of that. And then at the same time, I had an agenda for 20 years to get rid of machine access restrictions. I honestly thought in 2009, when we went from crates to bags, the camel's nose was in the tent, so to speak, that was, the beginning of the end. And in short order, we would just have free access to robots and we wouldn't have any of these restrictions anymore. But
it took 10 more years.
Still took 10 more years plus to get through that with good help from a lot of people and just relentless continuing to question, why do we do this? Here's some reasons why this is hurting you. And I think everybody's better for it. In the end, I think it's the right thing to do. And I can't really find analogs. Again, my background is in, bicycle racing, motorcycle racing, car racing, and things like that. There's no way that anyone in any of those sports would ever take your machine away from you for the sake of fairness. That doesn't exist in other machine sports. And I always thought it was an alien thing at first.
In terms of competitive advantage, it's a universal truth that teams who play more get better, and teams that play later in the season have better insight at championships. There are many different data sets highlighting this case of the district phenomena, but 3 years after the FIM conversion, the 2011 elimination rounds at Champs show this very clearly. About half the Champs field had been to one event all season, and about half had been to two. Even though almost half the field were in the one prior event group, only 8% of these teams advanced to the elimination rounds. Every member of Michigan's top 20 ranked teams were in St. Louis in 2011. 19 out of 20, which is 95% of these teams, advanced to eliminations. No other group of any kind had a similar level of success that year. The system still isn't without its faults. Michigan is still the most underrepresented region in the world in terms of teams that it sends to championships. Teams in the UP travel further than they would to regionals when they attend the district championship. Regional teams haven't played with district teams at lower levels in years, but the program keeps growing, and it sustains both of these models. So we're heading into the 2024 season, and Michigan currently leads the largest, densest district in FRC. How do you see it progressing in future years? I mean, there's a quote from you from 2013 that says, "We're building the plane as we're flying it." How do you feel about that plane now?
The plane is pretty good. Again, you got to take risks when you do anything new, and it's impossible to do anything with 100% confidence, right? You never know where your unknowns are until you do it. So that was a big part of maybe that quote. And that we do want to change and adapt things. Like with Michigan districts, some of our challenges will be things like we have learned over time that an advancement percentage to the state championship needs to remain at about 1/3 of the teams. If it gets down to about 1/4 of the teams, the competition experience starts getting rather cutthroat, meaning you need so many points to move into that upper echelon that you literally have to win an event to get enough points to make it. And in many ways, that's a regression back to the past of I got to win a regional to go to the championship, right? We don't ever want it to get there. We want a robot who is very good, and has the potential to win, at a team and a robot level, but didn't actually win due to luck and uncontrollable factors. You have a breakdown in the last match and you can lose a tournament, come in second. We want the good teams. We want the best teams at the state championship. So at the beginning, we had a state championship of 64. That was really the behind the point system was how do we find who is the best who is the 64th best team in the state? How do we do that? Now we're trying to find for the 160th best team in the state. If we continue to grow on the post-COVID trajectory that we're currently on again, in a few years, we'll be back to the principal question. So we were talking about this in 2020 before COVID struck and reset a lot of things, but is 160 too small? Will we have to go to 200? Will we have to go to larger event? Venues start becoming a real problem if you start to get too much bigger. Season extension also is a hard limiter with schools. You can't say, well, let's do 2 state pre-championships and then an ultimate championship. Yeah, school's over and exams are over by the time you do that. So a lot of that stuff does not fit into the season model. So going to a larger state championship is a distinct possibility if growth continues the way it's going. Some of the things I think that, first in general and first in Michigan in general need to work on. Program costs to me have always been one of the things. It's a hard topic to discuss with anybody. Everybody likes to make money, but ultimately we're doing this for the kids, right? So the program costs.
So should the rest of FIRST go to districts?
Should the rest of FIRST go to districts? No, absolutely not. There's a place for the regional. So they're just 2 different operating constructs based on organizational competency. If you're setting up in a new region, you're moving into Singapore, you're moving into Idaho, I don't care where it is, there's not a robust FIRST community there. You have to bring in a bunch of experts who know how to produce a tournament with a couple key locals to help you secure the venue and get logistics and operations done. But you have to bring in external people and produce a tournament and be a success. You have to be able to do that in new emergent areas. Once you get like local competency and enough local density, then you can talk about things like, can you have a regional control over the events in your region? And then what is a region? To the what is a region question, I still go back to the state model is the best model. Why? Because it makes sense to government. It makes sense to school districts. It makes sense to parents. You go, I am in a state robotics league, the same way I am in a state football league, or I'm in a state tennis league, and you have state championships. And then the message to government is really clear. My state legislature and my state representatives, they represent the people in their state. They may care about the people in Illinois, but those are not their taxpayers. Those are not their constituents. So if you're going to try to get legislation passed to fund FIRST or turn robotics into a sport or whatever you're going to do through government, a state model is absolutely the way to go. But there's a place for both.
Districts may have been lunacy in 2009, but in 2023, they're a mainstay of the competition. As the systems progress, we'll see how the crescendo of teams and events add to the discrepancy between the 2 systems, but until then, thanks Jim for the history, and thank you for the rewind. Make sure you subscribe to Fun's YouTube channel, and if you enjoyed the show, give it a like, and let us know in the comments your thoughts or any other topics you want to see covered. Next time on Rewind.
This video on FIRST Updates Now is made possible by viewers like you and also the following sponsors. At Kettering University, over 30% of the student population was in high school robotics. These same students have received a portion of over $7 million in FIRST scholarship. Scholarship applications will open in September. Get ready to go pro and get more information at kettering.edu/first. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay up to date on our new videos. Keep the conversation going and provide your input to our content. Watch our live shows at twitch.tv/FirstUpdatesNow. Join our Discord at discord.gg/FirstUpdatesNow and check out Fun FTC on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and FIRST Updates Now on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.